Yes? Eh? Quite a good scene, isn't it? One man crazy, three very sane spectators.
Just let me out. That clock keeps ticking like a metronome, and my thoughts keep telling me to get me home, but my balls keep telling me to let me out. Oh, just let me out.
I have had many of my viewers share their thoughts on this watch, this Frankenstein. A lot of you love it, and a lot of you hate it. But unlike the man who created the monster, the Prometheus, the wretch, I admire it for being different. And today I'll be discussing this watch and talking through every modification I've made to it over the last few months. Before I begin, let's look at what this watch was like when it first arrived to me. So the Steinhart Ocean One has been a popular watch in my collection. One of the first videos I ever made was comparing it against the Ocean Rover. And since then it's gone through a couple of changes that I've tried to keep you updated with. The original watch was a standard 42mm ceramic bezel model. I bought second hand in and around 2015. The watch was in very good condition, and immediately there were a few things that took me by surprise when I had the watch. The first aspect that really bothered me about the watch was the bracelet. It's by no means a badly made bracelet, it is very good for what it is. Solid end links, solid mid links. It had a stamped clasp but a milled out deployment mechanism. What bothered me is the way the end links met with the case, and how those center links just didn't fit the form factor of the watch, that I appreciated at least. So that was the first thing that I removed, and I replaced it with a standard oyster style bracelet, which a lot of my viewers in the past said it was the most ugly thing I ever did to the watch. Wait and see. The next thing that bothered me about the watch were the lugs, and the way the lugs were spaced. I found them to be too wide. At 22mm they were too wide for the case themselves, and the angles that they were positioned in just didn't look in proportion to the case. I found them to be a little bit out of the way. So what I decided to do was to then sand down the edges of the lugs to taper them into the case a little bit more to reduce the overall size. Once that was done, I started sanding the crown down because I found the crown was also very prominent on the stem. And finally, the last step was to modify the bezel and to take out the ceramic insert and replace it with an aluminium insert. That was done purely because the ceramic was very reflective. I didn't find it a very appealing look, especially in contrast to the AR coating on the sapphire crystal. And this is the end result. As you can see now, the case is dictated by the size of the watch head, and the lugs are no longer really present. This was done entirely with a Dremel tool and a bit of sanding to get the proportions right, but you can see overall the presence has been reduced greatly. Now if I bring up the Ocean Rover, a watch that I tend to bring up a lot because most of us know what a 40mm dive watch looks like in size. Comparing them side by side, you can see that their proportions are pretty interesting. Now the lug presence, like I've said in a lot of my videos, lugs dictate the size of a watch in many cases. So to take the lugs away almost entirely, it really reduces the overall size. Of course, the bezel, being a faded bezel now, dictates the presence a lot more. But in saying that, I think that overall reduction in size makes a difference. And something that I've noticed is that the AR coating, though it did bother me a lot in the past, it doesn't bother me as much anymore now that the bezel is faded. With a ceramic bezel, The highly reflective surface against a very bright blue color got really jarring, and I'll feature a picture for you to have a look at. The choice of NATO is an ugly one, which was another reason why I did it. Since this is Frankenstein, a standard khaki colored NATO looks something like this, and this is more like a disgusting, dirty, filthy desert sand NATO, and I think it works so well for this incarnation of a watch. It's a very polarizing watch. I can guarantee that a lot of you will like it and a lot of you will hate it, but it's made me wear it a lot more now that I've done these adjustments to it. I have never intended to have this watch as something to cherish and to look after. This watch has been purposefully made to be used on a daily basis. Something else that I didn't mention in the discussion was that this is now a bidirectional bezel instead of a unidirectional bezel, a bit more fitting to its, should I say, prestigious past of a vintage style dive watch. Accuracy wise, the movement is superb. ETA 2824s never let anyone down. And overall, I just really enjoy the watch. I love looking at it, especially when there's no light refracting off the surface. I think it looks superb. So let's get it on the wrist. If you haven't seen my video of the Corju sterile dress watch, I did an initial impressions a few days ago. Highly recommend you have a look at that because I talk about it in a bit more length. If you know anything about Alango and Zone, you'll appreciate this watch. So let's get this off the wrist and put this on. Now this is where I think the modification really shines, because once again the presence of the watch has been dictated a lot thanks to the lugs being reduced. I have a 7-inch wrist, and as you can see, it fits very well, very comfortably. And just in comparison, I'll throw on the Jeanneau to show you the difference. So the Jeanneau, being a 40mm diver, it is a bit smaller, and as you can see the lugs don't reach the extremities of my wrists, but comfortability wise I think the Steinhart does have an edge when it comes to the way it fits to the wrist. I'll switch back to it now for you. So the bonus is the lug width allows for a lot more variety with the strap choices, and to any of the eagle-eyed viewers you might have realized that this is not a 22mm strap, this is actually a 24mm strap, which means that it fits very comfortably to the wrist, and the watch head and everything else doesn't feel oversized. It actually reduces the overall size of the watch. So modifying this watch has been a lot of fun over the last few months. It's been something very different. It's been an experimentation. Of course, I can't resell this watch because no one would be interested in something that's been hacked to pieces. But then again, this watch has never been intended for anything but being used as a tool, and it really has passed with flying colors. If you haven't seen my latest Mark & Sons review after 2 years, I talk about how when you put value aside and you use a watch for the purpose of it being a watch, that's when it really shines, and this watch has performed flawlessly. If it's been taken swimming practically every day of its life, I use it when I run every evening, this watch still doesn't skip a beat. And it just shows, it's just a testament to how well made these watches really are. I just didn't like the design of them very much, but that's just me. I thought this would be a nice discussion to have while I wait for new watches to arrive in the post. But until then, to all my new subscribers, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed the clip, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers for now.
It's alive!